Irish soda bread is very easy to make and very delicious to eat. And I serve it every single St. Patrick's Day. So to 1 1/3 cups of whole milk, add 1/3 of a cup of apple cider vinegar. If you watch closely, the milk starts to bubble immediately and starts to curdle, to acidify. And into a big bowl, 3 cups of all-purpose flour. I generally use Hecker's flour for pretty much all my baking needs. A teaspoon of baking powder. Make sure that it's fresh, hasn't expired, you haven't had it hanging around in your cupboard for a year. 1 teaspoon of baking soda, 2 1/2 teaspoons of salt, and I'm using kosher salt. Very important to have enough salt in this bread. And you can whisk this together. Now you can add another essential ingredient to this, and it's called coarse bran. This is the outer coating of the wheat. It comprises about 14% of the wheat by weight, and it is where a lot of the nutrition in the wheat berry is. And it adds a very nice flavor to the Irish soda bread. So we're making it healthier and better for you. So here's our dry ingredients, into which we cut butter. Now, I find that the cutting in of the butter is accomplished much more easily when you have the butter cut into little 1/4-inch cubes like this. It's actually 4 tablespoons of butter. This is just sliced from a stick of butter. And if it's cold enough, this is very easily accomplished. Then you just stack it like this. Make sure the butter's cold, and then cut crosswise. And you have all the little cubes of butter that you need. You can do this all ahead of time and keep the butter in the refrigerator until you're ready to form whatever you're making. But when I make pâte brisée or pâte sucrée, I always cut the butter up like that. And here it is, 4 tablespoons of butter into 1/4-inch pieces. Now this, I'll just put right back in the fridge, and I'll have it for the next loaf of Irish soda bread. It creams easily, it's very easy. So now cut with your old-fashioned pastry cutter, and I love these, and just cut your butter into the dry ingredients. This is a very easy 1-bowl bread. You want it to look like coarse meal, like you always say in the recipes, coarse meal. Let's see how the milk is doing. Oh my gosh, it is already curdled. It's like magic, it really works. And it's flavorful and fragrant. Now we're going to add to this our raisins. 1 cup of dark raisins for this recipe, but you can use golden raisins. Make sure I kind of pack in the raisins. I love raisins in this bread. So add your raisins, and you can do this by hand. And very important to have lots of caraway seeds. This is the essential ingredient for rye bread. It's an anise-flavored seed. 1/4 cup we're going to add. Gives a crunchiness and an extraordinary flavor to the soda bread. And then we're going to stir in the buttermilk. Your homemade buttermilk. And that's it, really easy. Stir it in, moisten every particle of flour, but don't overwork. And I must tell you, the apple cider is very, very fragrant. And now on a lightly floured surface, form your ball of bread. Flour on the crust does not hurt. In fact, oftentimes if you buy soda bread, you'll see it's very white and floury. Oops. Use a bench scraper, give it just 1 or 2 light kneads, and put this right on parchment-lined baking sheet. You can dust it with a little bit more flour on the top. Cut a big X in the surface of the bread. And pop this into your 350-degree preheated oven and set your timer for 1.25 hours. And now I think our Irish soda bread is done. It certainly looks done. Let it cool on a rack, and you can cut it while it's still slightly warm and serve it with Irish butter, or wait till it completely cools and give it to your friends. This is Irish soda bread. That St. Patrick's Day is kind of a drinking day. There's lots of Guinness consumed, but it's also the perfect time to enjoy a delicious green drink. And I'm going to show you how to make a honeydew melon and cucumber mojito. It's non-alcoholic, which makes it a good alternative for anyone who doesn't want to overindulge on this fun holiday, but you could add, if you'd like, a little bit of rum or vodka to make it an alcoholic drink. First thing, I use my juicer, I love this juicer so much, and I'm going to turn it on high, and I am going to juice a peeled and seeded honeydew melon. There we go. It makes the best juice. So there, I think we have good juice. While that is just dripping out, in a tall glass, you can muddle a quarter of a lime and a couple sprigs of mint with 2 teaspoons of superfine sugar. This is a muddler. And on St. Patrick's Day, there are a lot of muddled people around. Do not confuse a muddler with the muddled. Okay, so that's that. Add your cucumber slices. Just put that in. Fill with ice, or like 3/4 full of ice. Add your delicious, beautiful melon juice. Oh, I love this. And I would say about that much, maybe 2/3. So this makes a couple good drinks. Top with club soda. So good. And you are ready to sort of add something very pretty. You want to make a shamrock out of the green skin of a cucumber. You can peel that off and get a piece like this. Use a shamrock cookie cutter if you have one. If you don't have one, please get one before St. Patrick's Day. And make a little slit in it like this so it'll hang on the edge of your glass. And if by chance you do want a real mojito, just add white or silver rum up to the top and enjoy. With good reason, many desserts include alcohol in the list of ingredients. And today I'll spike 4 longtime favorites with either a fortified wine, flavored liqueur, or a spirit to contribute both depth of flavor and fragrance. We have Mrs. Mouse's fruitcake, a fruitcake I've been making since I was a child. It is delectable and spiked. And we also have a wonderful plum and port crostata using a sweet port wine that just enhances the flavor of those Italian prune plums. And a rum raisin pie, which when baked looks like a piece of pottery. You'll go for this over rum raisin ice cream. And tiramisu, today on Martha Bakes. As a child growing up in Nutley, New Jersey, I have really fond memories of helping our neighbors, Mr. and Mrs. Robert Mouse, make the most wonderful German fruitcakes loaded with candied fruits and nuts. And I have quite an array of such things right in front of me. History has it that some fruitcakes have lasted 25 years. I don't know about that, but I have kept fruitcakes for over a year, and they are only better than ever. So start with 1 pound of butter in the bowl of your mixer. And have the ingredients at room temperature for the batter. I have chopped the fruits by hand, according to Mr. Mouse. This is candied orange peel. This is candied citron. Citron's an unusual lemony fruit that grows in Florida. It's not really edible until it is cooked in a sugar syrup, and then it looks like this. When you chop it, so delicious. It's crunchy and sugary and a little bit hard. Golden raisins, candied lemon peel. These are sour cherries that have been dried. And these are sulfured apricots. You don't want to use the unsulfured because they're dark brown and they just don't look pretty. And then lots of nuts, 2 pounds of walnuts and pecans, hand chopped also. So butter is creaming. Add 2 cups of granulated sugar. Have 12 eggs cracked like this, and we're going to add the eggs one by one. 2. Let each egg get incorporated into the butter and sugar. And measure out 1/2 cup of unsulfured molasses. Molasses is very sticky. I'll add some of the orange peel, some of the citron. All our beautiful fruit is now getting mixed in. Some of the raisins, the lemon peel, apricots, and cherries. So now just pour this whole thing into a bowl big enough to hold everything. Some of the walnuts, some of the pecans, and now you're going to sift your dry ingredients right over this wet batter. 2.5 cups of flour and 2 tablespoons of allspice. Just sift that right over the top. And the rest is to be incorporated by hand. The rest of your nuts and all of the cut up beautiful fruit. So once it's all incorporated like this, then you can fill your pans. Butter the pan very well. Make a collar of parchment paper that's 3 inches high and put that right around the outside of the pan. This helps the cake rise, and it makes a very pretty presentation too. Now this makes 5 6-inch cakes. And don't forget to butter the parchment paper. Now it's time to measure into the pans. Each pan should contain about 1 pound and 10 ounces of the batter. Continue filling your pans and press down your batter so that it is of even thickness in the pan. So now these fruitcakes should bake in a 275-degree oven for 3 to 3.5 hours. So these have just come out of the oven, and while they're still warm, put 1/3 cup of brandy mixed with a tablespoon of sugar and brush all over the tops. This syrup will soak into the cakes and start flavoring them. And now for the fun part, decorating the tops of these gorgeous cakes. 1 cup of apricot jam and about 1/3 cup of brandy. Stir this well. You want to melt the jam. So now just put this through a sieve. It smells very good. And the glaze is really serving 2 purposes, not only to glaze the top of the cake and make it shiny, but also to hold the fruit in place. And I'll press the rest in as I need it. So here we have very nice glaze. And we're only glazing the top of the cake, not the sides. And of course, you can pick and choose what you want to put on the top. So 1 pear on the top of that one. And, I think I'll do a piece of pineapple on this one with a little clementine in the center. And you can surround the whole thing with cherries and a border of perfect pecans. And then you glaze over the entire top again. And when the jam hardens, these will stay right where they are. And whoever is gifted that cake is going to be very, very happy. Making fruitcake is a wonderful tradition, and a tradition that I think you should share with your family and friends. Enjoy. When there's an abundance of ripe, juicy fruit, I love making freeform tarts called crostatas. And I use a simple pâte brisée recipe, 2.5 cups of flour and a teaspoon of sugar and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. This is a very good flaky crust, and it works really, really well with a crostata. One of my favorites is a plum and port crostata made with flavorful port wine reduction. It transforms this very easy tart dessert into something sensational, and you will love it. So just pulse the dry ingredients so that they're well mixed. And to that, add 2 sticks of icy cold butter cut into 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch squares. So just a couple pulses breaks the butter up into nice sizes, and you'll use anywhere from 1/3 cup to 1/2 cup of iced water. You don't want ice in the iced water. 1 piece of ice can just ruin your crust because it forms a little wet spot and it'll just break or ooze or do something bad. So never any ice. So pour the water while you pulse, and you might find pulsing kind of annoying, but it actually works really well because it avoids overworking. That looks good. You want to form the crust into 2 rounds because this is really enough for 2 crostatas. So just dump the pastry out on the plastic wrap. Without handling the pastry too much, press into a round, flat disc. And wrap well. And continue to flatten with the palm of your hand. That makes a very nice crust. So chill this for at least an hour. You want it chilled through and through, but not hard. And so now I'm making the port reduction for the plums. 1½ cups of ruby port and 1/2 cup of light brown sugar. Bring this to a boil, and the syrup has to reduce to 1/2 cup. So for this particular crostata, we're using Italian prune plums. These are the dark purple plums with a yellowy interior that are sweet and sour at the same time. So we'll need 2 pounds. Some are freestone and some are not. Freestone means the flesh comes easily away from the pit. These are almost freestone. Roll out your pastry, which is chilled, so it'll fit nice and generously in a 9-inch preferably glass pie plate like this. And I always like to spray with a little vegetable spray or even just a little bit of butter the pan for crostata, especially because they tend to leak and get a little sticky. This is a nice pastry rolling out very well right away, which is a good sign. And notice I'm really rolling in one direction, trying to get a nice even round, moving my pastry around and lifting it up off the surface. Okay, so to make it easier to pick up, you can just roll it over your pin like this, and working quickly, lay it on your dish. Right into the freezer if you're going to be making the tart in the next 15 minutes or so, or into the fridge if you need a half hour or so. So here is our beautiful reduced port wine. Oh, it looks so good. Pour that right over your fruit. So port wine is a nice, sweet, fortified wine. It's made by adding grape alcohol to red wine while it's fermenting. Stir that into your prune plums. Add 3/4 cup of light brown sugar to keep those juices from running over too much all over your oven. Add 1/4 cup of cornstarch. This will thicken those juices. And a teaspoon of salt. And 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. What a rich and delectable filling. And here it is. It's already gotten just a little bit stiffer. And pour your filling right into the crust. This should be just about the right amount. Even out the layer of fruit. Carefully turn the crust up over the fruit. I like to kind of ruffle it, keep it rustic. And the more sort of little pleats and gathers, the prettier it is. And now, brush the exterior of the crust with heavy cream. So now work quickly because everything should be cold. And here we have sanding sugar. It's really pretty to put on the crust. And the crunch goes well with the soft fruit. Get that right into a 400-degree preheated oven and bake for 30 minutes. Then reduce the heat to 375 and bake for another 45 minutes or so until the crust is golden and the center is bubbling. This crostata has cooled on the rack and it's still warm, but really does look rustic and delicious. You'll be looking forward to Italian plum season as much as I do. Enjoy. If you find yourself frequently reaching for a pint of rum raisin in the ice cream aisle, you're going to love this recipe for rum raisin pie. A silken vanilla rum custard and plump golden raisins fill a flaky crust for a new take on a delicious combination. So I'm just finishing rolling up a half recipe of our pâte brisée. Fit this right into a pie plate, preferably glass. And don't let it get too warm because you will not be able to flute the edges beautifully. This can get right into the freezer just to stiffen up a little bit. So, and I think I have one in the freezer. So here is our chilled and nicely fluted pie shell. Have your oven preheated to 425 degrees. And now we have to blind bake the pie shell. You can crumple up your square of parchment. You could lay it in the crust, but it really helps to do this crinkling because it stays better and flatter in the crust. And then fill with whatever weights that you use. These are green peas, split peas, that we use as pie weights. So once you fill the crust with your weights, put it into a preheated 400-degree oven and bake for about 15 minutes. Remove the weights, reduce the temperature to 375, and bake until the whole crust is a beautiful golden brown. That takes another 15 to 20 minutes. Now, I told you this was a delectable tart, and it is. The custard is so silky smooth and delicious. So you have 4 eggs and 2 egg yolks. Whisk these up. At the same time, heat 3 cups of heavy cream. You have to really kind of scald the cream. And 2/3 of a cup of sugar. And a little bit of salt, like 1/4 teaspoon's fine. And mix this up until the sugar is dissolved. When the cream is not boiling, but just starting to simmer, then it's ready to incorporate into the egg yolks. And we will be tempering the eggs. Very nice. We don't want to cook the egg, so tempering means putting a hot liquid slowly and carefully into the eggs to bring them up to temperature without boiling them. If you just threw the eggs into hot cream, they would curdle. So this is tempering them. And now this whole mixture can go right back into the pan. Moderate the heat so that it's not too high and will allow the custard to thicken naturally. The eggs really act as a thickener. And you can just keep whisking until that custard coats the back of a wooden spoon. Now this is what our crust looks like. It's cooled, but what a beautiful crust. And notice, a well-made crust can lift right out of the dish, has no holes in it, no cracks, and because it's rum raisin, you need 1 cup of fresh golden raisins. Try to get a really good quality raisin and sprinkle them all over in one even layer, all over the bottom of the crust. Now, isn't that surprising how nice and thick this custard is? And this is what I mean when it coats the back of a wooden spoon and a finger drawn through, it stays separate. That's exactly the right consistency. And now, your 1/4 cup of rum, stirred in, and this is poured hot into your crust. Very pretty. Right into a 375-degree oven until the center of the custard is set, about 25 to 30 minutes. So this is what that gorgeous rum raisin pie looks like. And slice it, cool it first, of course, but then slice it into generous slices. Lift this out. It holds its shape really nicely. Some whipped cream. This is a must-have recipe for all you rum and raisin fans out there. Some people say tiramisu has been around since the days of Michelangelo. That's the 16th century, and its name means pick-me-up, and it's been made with ladyfingers, biscotti flecked mascarpone, espresso, whipped cream, and last but not least, coffee-flavored liqueur. To make the ladyfingers, not too difficult to make your own, and they're so much better than anything you can buy. So 6 egg yolks with 11 tablespoons of sugar. We'll let this beat up until it's light and fluffy. We also are going to use 1 1/4 cup of flour. Always level. And in another mixing bowl, we have the 6 egg whites. And you can prepare your baking sheets if you like. We have drawn the width of the ladyfingers that we want to create, and you'll need 2 baking sheets lined with parchment. So that's beating very nicely. And we have to fold the flour into the egg yolk mixture. You can use the machine for folding if you do it quickly. Otherwise, use a rubber spatula and fold in the flour by hand. So I'm going to sprinkle, and that's folding a little bit. That's it. So it's a little faster than with the rubber spatula. So now finish off the folding process with your beater. Just go around a few times. And into this, you're going to fold softly beaten egg whites. Sprinkle with 1 tablespoon of granulated sugar. They get nice and fluffy. The egg whites go from translucent to white and fluffy. So this looks just about the right consistency. You don't want to overbeat. And now lighten your mixture with a dollop of this. And amazingly, this does lighten. So now add some more of your egg white. Homemade ladyfingers tend to be softer than the commercially available ladyfingers, and I think they're just so much better. So that looks good. Now, the easy way to pipe this is, of course, with a pastry bag and 1/2 inch round pastry tip. Fold down the top of your bag and fill with the batter. By folding down the top, it enables you to not get batter dripping out of the top of the bag. You can fold over the collar and gather it and pipe. Now, these are all going to be buried in the tiramisu, so you're not even going to see them. So if they're not absolutely perfect, don't worry about it. Make sure you preheat your oven to 350 degrees. Now, before these go into the oven, you must sprinkle them with powdered sugar. This forms a kind of crunchy crust on top of the spongy ladyfingers. Now, if you're not familiar with ladyfingers, they're a classic cake-like cookie used as an accompaniment for ice cream, mousses, puddings, charlotte russe, and other desserts. They're also known as the biscuit de Savoie, which is the Savoy biscuit. Let the ladyfingers sit out for about 3 or 4 minutes and into the 350-degree oven for about 15 minutes. And now for the final assembling of the lovely tiramisu. You'll need some biscotti or some amaretti. Grind them up in a food processor. That's good. Gives that little crunch in the tiramisu. And then to a pound of mascarpone, you will add 1 cup of sugar and 8 large egg yolks broken up. So stir this up. And now sprinkle in your cookie crumbs, ground up. And now your egg whites, just make sure that they are nice and fluffy, and fold those in. These are the 8 egg whites from the 8 egg yolks. And finish folding the remaining egg whites. So this is ready. Our ladyfingers are ready. This is freshly made cooled espresso. And to this espresso, add 2 tablespoons of a coffee liqueur And you're going to be soaking these quickly in the coffee liqueur. What you want is this whole surface covered with your delicious ladyfingers. Now, spread a layer of the mascarpone. Spread it carefully in an even layer, and it has that lovely color from the biscotti. Now, another layer of the ladyfingers. And if you love coffee, you're going to love this dessert. So spread this all over the second layer. And when did you say you were having that dinner party? This is the dessert to serve. And you're going to top it next with a layer of beautiful, fluffy whipped cream. Flavor your whipped cream with a tiny bit of confectioner's sugar and about a teaspoon of vanilla. Tastes very good. And then just swirl it on top. And this must get right into the refrigerator to be chilled for, several hours and preferably overnight. Now the last gilding of this lily is a fine grating of milk chocolate. Would you like to see what it looks like? Generally, you can actually see the layers of the filling and the ladyfingers. Drinking beer on St. Paddy's Day is a must for many people, but I have something a little bit different to help you celebrate. It's called matcha green tea. It's a little bit sweet, a beautiful green color, and it is really delicious. And you can have it hot or cold. And we make it into a latte, and very easy to make. You get the Rishi sweet matcha tea. It has a natural cane sweetener in it, cane sugar. And you put a tablespoon of the tea, this is what it looks like, powdered like this, into just a little bit of hot water, like a tablespoon. Stir that up, and you can use the green tea whisk, which you can get in Japanese stores. So this is a combination of Ireland and Japan, but mat means powder and cha means tea in Japanese. And then add 1 cup of milk. Steam this up. If you have a cappuccino machine, great. If you do not, you can just do this on the stove. The matcha tea is stone ground, the only form of tea in which the whole leaf is consumed. And to grow the leaves, the farmers in Japan cover the plants with heavy shade cloth for 3 weeks prior to the harvest, which takes place in May. And this causes new shoots to develop larger, thinner leaves with better flavor and texture. And then the matcha is harvested. It is ground by stone, and it is rich in antioxidants. It is really good for you. It protects against many kinds of cancer. It also has a significant amount of dietary fiber. So you can drink it here in a cup like that. Look at that great color. Or you can pour it over ice and drink it with a straw, an iced matcha latte. And I love the name, matcha latte. It's really good and a very nice alternative to beer. Here's a happy and healthy St. Patrick's Day. We'll be right back. For centuries, matcha, a powdered type of green tea, has been used in Japanese tea ceremonies. Nowadays, cooks are adding this antioxidant-packed, bright green powdered tea to everything from cocktails to cupcakes. I'll share 4 recipes using this superfood ingredient. A wonderful green tea crepe cake. It's called milk crepe, but there are really only 24 crepes in this cake. And green tea cookies, wonderful with a bowl of green tea. And of course, green tea cupcakes, a special treat for old and young alike. And green tea tuiles with matcha ice cream, extra delicious. All of this today on Martha Bakes. The humble crepe becomes a show-stopping dessert when stacked layer upon layer with green tea, flavored pastry cream, and a topping of green tea. Let me show you how to make this exquisite cake. It's not so difficult. 6 large eggs. Put those right into your blender jar. 2 1/4 cups of whole milk. And, oh, this is the best part, cooled melted butter. 12 tablespoons and 1 tablespoon of vanilla, best quality. Half a teaspoon of salt. And 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. And just put that right into the blender. That's a half, another half, and the last half. And 1 cup of granulated sugar. Now it's very, very full, so rather than having an eruption all over your kitchen, start on very, very low. And then you can go up and process for approximately a minute. This can then be passed through a fine sieve. See, there was a little bit of flour unincorporated, and that would not make a fine crepe. And a few little bits and pieces of egg. So cover this with plastic wrap and chill overnight. This batter has been in the refrigerator for 24 hours right before using. Blend it again. For about a minute. We're using a 10-inch non-stick pan. This is not the traditional crepe pan. This is the traditional crepe pan. And if you're used to making crepes this way, of course, proceed. But this really is great for beginners, and it's great for everybody. And the butter is at room temperature, and I find that it's best to use butter like this and just brush all over the pan. And this is a ladle that's 2 inches across. You're going to use a scant ladle of batter. Put it right in your pan and swirl. You want the entire bottom of the pan to be covered with the batter, and keep swirling until there is nothing left to swirl. This looks really good. Have on hand a small offset spatula, and I find that when the whole bottom is a little bit bubbly, the crepe is ready to turn. And you can see, if you look really closely, the edges are just starting to brown. And when you get really good, you can flip it. You can lift it with your spatula like this and turn it over. There, perfect. Very nice. And just keep making them until you have your stack of 24 crepes. So now we're going to make the pastry cream that's going to go between the crepes, and that will form the cake. Scrape the seeds from 1 vanilla bean. Drop the seeds into 3 cups of milk as well as the entire bean. That should come to a boil. Add a pinch of salt and 1/4 cup of granulated sugar to the milk. Mix 1/4 cup of sugar, 6 tablespoons of cornstarch, which will be our thickener for the cream. Add 6 egg yolks to your dry ingredients. Now it's very thick. Shake down the sides. Get all that mixed into the egg yolks. And then 2 tablespoons of matcha to your milk. Matcha is a very interesting form of tea. The tea is poached or just steamed, and then it is dried, and then it is finely ground. And it is a beautiful, flavorful, unusual tea. And studies suggest that this form of green tea fights cancer, heart disease, lowers blood pressure, increases bone density, and boosts metabolism. When it's simmering, add 2 tablespoons of the matcha. Look at this. And oh, it smells so good. Now we're going to whisk a little bit of this hot liquid into our egg yolks, tempering the egg yolks so that when we finally put them back in here to cook, they will not curdle. If you did that all at once, it would really get them too hot and curdle the eggs. Get it all whisked in. Now add this to your pot and whisk this in. So let this come to a boil for 2 minutes and then strain it. So just scrape through the strainer, really press gently, and this will all pass through. So beautiful. Now this should be made 24 hours in advance. Keep everything in the refrigerator. So you see, you don't want that in your pastry cream, but you do want the flavor of that. So scrape the bottom, stir in 3 tablespoons of room temperature butter. Let this melt right into your pastry cream. It has a little flavor and a little glossiness, a little richness. Stir until all that butter is melted. Place a piece of plastic wrap right on the surface to keep a skin from forming. Chill this for at least 2 hours, but preferably overnight, 24 hours. So here's our chilled pastry cream. See how it darkened a little bit? Adding the whipped cream lightens this, makes it more fluffy, and it still holds nicely. Fold this in. So beautiful. First crepe, 1/4 cup of the cream. Spread it with a spatula almost to the edge. Pretty impressive, don't you think? Now this has to go into the refrigerator to be chilled for a couple hours, really well chilled. 24 crepes right into the refrigerator. 1 hour or up to 6 hours. So in a small bowl, sift 1 tablespoon of the powdered green matcha with a tablespoon of confectioner's sugar. And there you have a spectacular cake for any occasion. Our crepe cake with green tea. What do you think? A double dose of green tea gives these buttery cookies their unique flavor and an unusual color. This is the way green tea usually is sold. Using a mortar and pestle works very, very well to grind the tea leaves. And you can really break down the leaves, and it comes out to be a fine green powder like this. And you're going to need 2 tablespoons of fine green powder. Now, if you don't have loose tea, you can always just open up one of your green tea bags and use the tea that's inside the bag. And this tea isn't powdery enough, so put that through the process of the mortar and pestle. This will take a minute or 2, and you'll have the fine powder that you need. So 2 tablespoons of green tea leaves that have been ground, and 1 tablespoon of powdered green matcha. Now this is a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Stir that in. And all-purpose flour, 2 cups. Oh, by the way, this is a tea plant. They grow in tea plantations in China or India. So here's our green tea and flour all mixed together. Now, cream your butter, 2 sticks of unsalted butter, a 1/2 cup of confectioner's sugar. Put that right in. And in addition to the 1/2 cup, 2 tablespoons. And add the dry ingredients. The cookie dough will be the bright green of the matcha tea. Have 2 pieces of parchment paper ready because you're going to roll this dough into 1 1/4 inch round logs. So take this out in 2 amounts. We have a little trick, and it's very Japanese, for making the rolls perfect, and that's to use a bamboo mat, which is what the sushi chefs use. So roll it in the paper, and then voila, Japanese bamboo. And this should help you get a perfect round. Oh yes, looking good. So chill these, and after an hour or so, you can slice them and bake them. So here's how the dough looks as it comes out of the freezer. So slice these 1/4 inch thick, arrange them on your parchment-lined baking sheet, preheat your oven to 350 degrees, and then bake 13 to 15 minutes. So now these beautiful cookies would be so delicious with a cup of hot tea. And when in Japan, I learned all about green tea. So 2 scoops of matcha. And then this is the special little bamboo whisk that you must have to whisk the tea. Water that's just boiled, and you whisk with your bamboo whisk to dissolve all that powder and get a little bit of froth on top of your tea. This is healthy and delicious and really goes very well with those lovely green tea cookies. Delicious. Enjoy. Matcha makes an appearance in every element of this grown-up cupcake, from the moist, tender cake to the white chocolate ganache filling. Who better than a Japanese baker to teach us a little bit more about matcha? We have Eijiro Logano from Chickalicious,
Yes.
known as EJ. And he's here to put a green tea twist on an American favorite. Why don't you tell us what the dry ingredients are for this particular cupcake?
So 1 cup of cake flour and a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda
Okay.
and 1/2 teaspoon of the baking powder and 1/4 teaspoon of the salt
And how
and
much matcha?
5 teaspoons of the matcha.
This makes it green.
Nice green. And then,
So you must use a lot of matcha
yes.
every single day.
So mix the dry ingredients. In the
Such a beautiful color. So I better cream the butter, right?
Yes.
Okay,
please.
so 4 tablespoons of butter, not very much butter, and 3/4 of a cup of regular sugar, and 1 large egg.
Yes. What a beautiful eggs.
Yes, those are all from my chickens.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I bring them in every day, and they're very yellow.
Yes, it is.
So you can add the dry ingredients for us.
So 1/3 at a time, like this much. And then and 1/3 more. Go ahead. Yeah, you got it.
And what about the milk?
In the end. Okay, I can do that.
Yeah.
All right. Then add to the 1/2 cup.
So room temperature it hasn't been heated.
Just
Enough.
room temperature is enough.
Okay.
So
Not
if you
cold.
need cold, the butter is gonna be the coagulate. So room temperature.
Okay.
Just little by little. And then when you mix, it makes glutens. Gluten make like a thicker. I think it's okay.
Done? Okay. Done.
Then
So, okay, so, and you're going to use ice cream scoop.
yes, much easier.
So 1 scoop.
1 scoop.
Now, I didn't tell you to preheat your oven, but 350 degrees,
Yes.
right? Okay.
Yes. And put a center. It's like a half of the cups. Room temperature is a best. It's a fluffier, when you bake.
Get that right into the oven. We'll rotate halfway through until a cake texture comes out clean, about 16 minutes. So now EJ is going to show us how to make a delicious fluffy icing for the cupcakes and a white chocolate green tea ganache. Okay, so 1 cup of sugar to a 1/2 cup of water and make a syrup.
Like a 2 to 3 minutes to boil it up. And then after boil it up, like a 5 seconds. And then move to the ice bath.
Oh, okay, so really chill it.
Little chill.
Okay.
So add the 3 tablespoons the heavy cream to 5-ounce white chocolate and then melt in the double boil.
It's over simmering water. Just be careful not to burn it. So while this melts, cream the butter.
The with
Okay.
syrup for the buttercream. So.
Oh no, but we have it cooled.
Oh.
We have a simple syrup, 3/4 of a cup, really thick. And then cream the butter.
Yes.
2 sticks, 1/2 pound of butter, and nothing else.
Butter and syrup.
Okay, like this?
Yes. Faster. Try to hit the side of the bowl.
Hit the
Because
side.
if you hit the whisk, syrup goes everywhere.
You're right.
Now you can make the ganache. This is a 1 teaspoon the water
Okay.
and add the 2 teaspoons of matcha.
So this will dissolve in cold water.
It's cold water.
Oh.
And move the.
Here
you go.
So. Beautiful.
Okay. Use the small whisk.
Oh, okay. What a color.
Yes.
So this doesn't separate at all. It gets more fluffy.
More fluffy. So now finish the buttercream.
So how much green tea?
1 teaspoon the green tea.
There. Oh, wow, pretty.
Yes. That's it.
That's it. Okay. So there we have beautiful frosting.
All right.
You have your ganache. So we have to cool this to the same temperature as the frosting.
Yes, it is.
And then we're going to clean up a little bit and show you how to decorate your cupcakes, or EJ's cupcakes, I should say. Thank you. First, the ganache with a pastry bag.
Yes. So always, carry like this.
Yes. Otherwise.
Otherwise, it's dropping.
Okay.
So push into the cupcake in the middle, and fill like 1 tablespoon. You see, like
A little volcano.
Yes.
Fabulous. So here we have our buttercream.
Yes. Take out the air from the buttercream and like this high.
Oh, beautiful.
Yes.
So pretty. That's generous and
Yes.
beautiful.
And use the matcha to decorate just a half.
Very modern.
Yes. And use the ganache on the frosting too.
So EJ, thank you so much for a most wonderful lesson. Lots of techniques and beautiful green tea cupcakes. Imagine eating green ice cream in a green ice cream cone. Well, you can actually color beautiful tuiles that are formed into cones with matcha tea. For the cones themselves, the tuile, you'll need 2 cups of confectioner's sugar and 1 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour. Sift these 2 ingredients together because the flour and the confectioner's sugar might very well have lumps in it. Now sift this again into another bowl with 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt and 2 teaspoons of matcha. So here we have our dry ingredients. And now just break up 6 egg whites. You don't really have to get them too frothy. Add 1 tablespoon of heavy cream. We're making the batter for the tuile. And the tuile are going to be shaped into beautiful ice cream cones. Now this looks like a lot of butter, but it's very important for the tuile, which in French means tile. 10½ tablespoons of unsalted butter, melted and cooled, along with that tablespoon of cream and 1 teaspoon of good vanilla. And now you can gradually add your flour to this mix. It takes a little while for the liquid to absorb the flour, but it will. The basic tuile dough can be enhanced by flavorings such as matcha tea, chocolate, vanilla, lemon, orange. A plain tuile is delicious. You can find a plain tuile in the shape of a cigarette, dipped in chocolate on one end. Now I'm just going to transfer this into the bowl of remaining flour. The tuile dough is a little bit of a sticky dough, a little bit like glue. And once you get this all stirred, be prepared to put it through a fine sieve. So this is the batter. Press this through the sieve with your rubber scraper. It goes through very nicely. Now this gets covered, chilled, at least 2 hours and preferably overnight. So it helps to use a silicone baking mat in the bottom of your sheet pan, but also spray with a non-stick spray. It's really important. These little shapes are very good too, to make sure you have a perfectly round tuile. These are made out of a silicone material, and you can buy these or you can make one. And a tablespoon is about the right amount. Just drop it right in the center of your mold. And this is just a fraction of an inch thick. Use an offset spatula to evenly spread your tuile mix. Now lift up your form. Isn't that great? And spread this one. You can only bake 2 at a time. Preheat your oven at 375, 5 minutes. The edges are golden brown, and immediately wrap it right into your cone. Let it cool a little bit. And this one can go over a bowl. If it gets too hard, you can put that back into the oven just to soften for 1 second. And you can put another little bowl right on top to form the cup, to give it a little shape. The result is charming. Now there's one last thing to do. All the little cones have a little tiny hole right here. You don't want your ice cream dripping out. So take a little melted chocolate, and this is an eclair tip for filling eclairs or cream puffs, and just squiggle a little bit of dark chocolate or white chocolate right here in the bottom of the cone. That'll harden and act as a little dam. If you don't use this long tip, the pressure from the bag might crack the cone, and then all your work will be for naught. And we don't want that. So now the ice cream. Dip your scoop in a little bit of warm water and dry it. And for the perfect green tea. Doesn't that look amazing? What about a pretty tuile cup? Gorgeous. So this is a spectacular dessert, and it's amazing that something so delicious can be kind of healthy too. Green tea, exactly. What else could we make but wonderful corned beef and cabbage? And I don't think that this is unhealthy food. I think the way that we make it, corning it ourselves, no preservatives whatsoever. You've eaten corned beef and cabbage.
I have, and I would call this comfort food.
Yeah, and you can buy corned beef, you know, it's already made, and you buy it in that plastic bag that it comes in. But let me show you how easy it is, because this takes 3 to 6 days, depending on how corny you like your beef. And I don't mean corn like corn, but pickled. So we need to have 7 quarts of hot water. And we were using hot water because we really have to dissolve all the spices and the salt. This is pickling salt. You buy that at the hardware store or at the gourmet store. 1 teaspoon of pepper. That's 2 cups of pickling salt. 1/4 of a cup of dry mustard. That's the Coleman's mustard, English.
I know it well.
And 10 cloves of garlic. You just peel them and leave them whole. And pickling spices, so 2 tablespoons. So let that cool, that liquid. Make sure the mustard is all dissolved. Let it cool, and then we have one cooled over here, Jane.
Okay.
That's right here. We're going to add this beautiful piece of beef brisket. This is 8 pounds of beef brisket. Trim off most of the fat, and just put that right in your pickling brine. And to keep the meat submerged, I always put a plate right inside. Find a plate upside down. And if you want to really make sure that it's submerged, put like a bottle in there or something filled with water, but don't put metal. Because it's pickling, you don't want anything corrosive in that pickling juice. And we have a piece already corned. This has been in here for 6 days. We put this in the fridge.
Oh, well, that's a bit we forgot
take
to
a
tell
shelf.
people.
Take a shelf, or in the cold porch if you have a really cold porch, or in a cold cellar. That's where it usually would have been brined. But look what happens to the meat.
Yes.
It shrinks, and it also turns a darker color, sort of grayish. I have actually rinsed all the brine off. You rinse it under cold water and let it just sit until you prepare the rest of the cooking ingredients. This is a great pot. Le Creuset makes these big pots. So put your rinsed beef right into the bottom of the pot, and then you're going to cook it for about 2 hours with 2 celery ribs that are cut up into small pieces. some onions, 2 big onions that are peeled and cut into quarters. And all of this actually is in the final dish. And we need some garlic, 10 cloves. So if you have a garlic clove like that, we want it smashed so that it really does give off all its flavor in the broth. Just take your knife and just go like that. And the the outside of the garlic just comes right off so easily. They're so beautiful and large, these garlic cloves.
Love garlic.
Just put those in. And this really doesn't make it so garlicky as much as flavorful. It's really fantastic. So now cover this with water and then bring it to a boil, reduce it to a simmer, and cook it for about 2 hours. And then you're ready to add the rest of the vegetables. Now look, after 2 hours,
wow,
everything smells delicious. The beef is down in there. The onions are tender. The beef is very tender. And it's just there was a little bit of fat on that beef. It's almost all kind of melted off into the broth. And now you can add the rest of your ingredients, like 5 large red potatoes cut in half, to go with broth, and then carrots. And we have 3 carrots peeled and cut. Ooh, are you okay?
That's good. I can verify it's hot.
Oh, it's very hot. 3 parsnips, if you like parsnips. These are perfect, and they're in season right now.
My favorite vegetable is parsnips.
Oh, I love parsnips. I love parsnips, too. And salsify, do you like salsify? Do you grow that? The oyster
I haven't
plant?
grown that. No, I should try that one.
It's very good, too. 3 turnips peeled, white turnips peeled, and I hope we're going to have enough room in here. Are we going to have enough room in here, Wes?
Yeah.
Yep. We are, he says. It's not going to overflow in any way. So nice when everything's prepared. And look at this beautiful cabbage, 1 big head of cabbage. Make sure that each wedge has a little bit of the center rib in it so it doesn't fall apart. So that way you can get this right out and put this in. It will just
I don't know.
fit.
That just doesn't look like it's going to work out to me.
Oh, it will. Wes says so.
He's done his math, has he?
If Wes says so, it usually works.
Cram it in.
Cram it in now.
Cram them in, right?
Cram them in.
But they will get squished in by themselves. You'll just put this top on like that, and it will go down nicely. And a little bit of liquid has bubbled over, but that's okay. Now here it is, our entire boiled dinner. And you try to get everything out in beautiful wedges, and make sure that you have on the side mustard, you have vinegar, and you have a lot of horseradish.